How have romantic comedies evolved over the years? I mean, you know, we have Trainwreck, which, I mean, and I don't even know if The Graduate's really a romantic comedy, but totally different films, you know, in terms of to the way that humor is approached. And so how over the years, over the decades, have romantic comedies changed, or maybe they haven't?
What it looks like to me, from having looked at romantic comedies from way back in the 30s on up to today, is that, like a lot of films, they used to be more clever in the dialogue. We had snappier dialogue. It was a sharper sense of humor. There was intelligence and wit at play that I think we've lost some of. And that's just a cultural shift. People communicate differently now, whether it's because of social media or, you know, globalization. There's just not as much witty banter as there used to be in the romantic comedies. Also, you've seen a shifting in sexual attitudes and what's allowed. Remember that for a lot of the older films, they were being made under the Hays Code, which was a code imposed on Hollywood that you couldn't say certain things, you couldn't deal with certain topics, you couldn't have overt sexuality. So you get all these wonderful innuendos, right? And you get the look. Well, you don't have to see the people in bed together. You know that's where it's going, okay? So there's a lot of subtlety and really, really good writing in the older films because of those constraints. So now when anything goes, often I think people cut to the chase too soon, and what we like is the chase. Otherwise, frankly, you're just watching porn. You know, you need the story for it to really be engaging on those emotional and mental levels. So how I've seen them change a lot is in what you're actually going to see on screen, as well as the dialogue and the interaction between the characters, either being more constrained and more difficult to get together, or easier to get together, and then you sometimes, and unfortunately it doesn't work very well, you have to fabricate reasons for people to be in conflict.
Curious about this Hays Code. When did sort of those rules get lifted?
I do not know the answer to that.
Oh, okay.
I think it was in the early 60s.
Okay.
But that's something your writers should look up, because it was a very, very interesting time what got imposed on writing and filmmaking, and seeing how clever writers worked around it and still got to say what they wanted to say. But it used to be, if in that era, if you committed adultery, you had to die. If you were the mistress, you had to die. If you were the person who did this, you had to die. And usually it was the blonde.
Gosh.
Because we were upholding, you know, the truth, the American way, the American family, and all this hypocrisy. But also, you know, codes of behavior. So very, very interesting time. And also look into the whole blacklist era as well.
Right.
They kind of went hand in hand. It's a really good look for writers to look back and see the constraints that are often placed on writers and how to get around it and still tell wonderful stories.
Sure. I know the notorious Betty Page, they sort of touched on all that. But then the Summer of Love came. So I don't know if that's like 68, but things definitely changed. And then it was totally different. And you had, you know, where it was expected that people were swapping partners and things like that. So it's changed. Whereas now it seems like it's more sort of online hookups. So you see how the culture changes how these people get together, and it's interesting. But you said something earlier about maybe it being raunchier now. Do you think we'll ever go back to another time where maybe people will be like, you know what, I'm too desensitized to all this? Because even driving around Los Angeles, you see billboards that you're like, wow, I'm just shocked that that would be out there. But it's part of the culture now. It's expected to see certain images.
It is, and I think if we take a long view, we see that these sorts of things come and go. Everything is cyclic. Now, what I hope would not happen is that there is repression, because down that road lies, well, repression and all the bad stuff that comes with that. But what I would rather see is a raising of sensibilities, like what you just said. There's too much of that. It's like, Also, I think what you risk, and here again, raunchy is in style right now. It's a fad, and so many of the stand-up comics and the comedies are raunchy comedies. What I think we lose, now not to be censoring any of that, but what I think we lose is the sense of romance again. And I hear a lot of, particularly younger people, saying they wish things were more romantic. They wish they had the situations that they have read about, that they've seen in the movies, but it's just not like that right now. So I think what you may be finding is people wanting more romance because it's exhilarating, it's thrilling. And unless you've got a bit of distance, unless you've got a bit of the hidden, unless you've got some of the unobtainable, you're not going to have the striving and the yearning that is what makes romance.
So going back to that article or that little post I saw in my hometown newspaper about, I saw you and you were wearing this and you look like this and we shared a moment and please, and here's my number, area code 415, that we've lost that. And for me, I'm still remembering who was that man, who was that woman.
Yes.
What was it about her that was so, but
Yes.
Now it would just be like, there's just, you could probably swipe right or left on one of these social networks and Tinder, Grindr, whatever, and find who that person is. But I'm not sure really where I'm going with it. I guess it seems like it'd be nice to go back to that, but you're saying, so you hear from a lot of millennials that they kind of miss, like The Notebook, and that was probably before most millennials were watching films. I think that was, early 2000s or something.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like right around that time things started to change. So now we get more very open sexual talk, but a lot of the human emotion in terms of the yearning is gone.
I think it's important to keep in mind the various levels of our interactions with each other. And sex is easy. Sex is easy to get. Okay, not a problem. In our culture, anyway. Love, fortunately, is pretty well widespread too. You've got familial love and friendship love and, love of people who are involved in a similar cause. So love is pretty prevalent. But passion is rare and precious. And that's what romantic comedies, ideally, and the ones that end up being classics, are giving us. They're showing us passion. And you can't have passion without yearning. And you can't have yearning without a build-up. And you can't have a build-up without an ideal, something that to be yearning for, like that missed opportunity. So if you want to get the most out of that first kiss and the first boff or whatever, then you have to build up the energy. That's just physics. You have to build up the charge of energy. And then when those points come together, then you get the fireworks.
And how does a writer build that up? That's a great point.
Well, it could even be as simple as a line that says, he walks towards her, she can see what's on his mind, and then he turns away. And then you go to her and she's going, but, and then you have another, so you almost get people to, it's teasing, okay? It's foreplay, if you will, for the emotions, as well as, eventually it'll seep over into the physicalities of the love. But think of it as foreplay for the emotions. It's teasing. It's, oh, do they? Oh, I don't know. Oh, what about this? And almost getting there and then pulling away. So it's a real dance. It's a real dance.
Like the crossing and the crosswalk.
Like the crossing and the crosswalk.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to build up the tension for there to be any charge.